My daughter was trapped in a school bathroom. With 3 boys, I called 5 times and no one came. When I found the principal, he held up 5 fingers and told me to wait 5 minutes. While my child was screaming, he went back to finish his salad. I broke the door myself, and the police handcuffed me instead of him. Laya started at Ridgeline High that September. Ninth grade. 14 years old. First year at a school that pulls from 3 different middle schools, big campus, crowded hallways, easy for a kid to disappear in. She was the kind of kid who packed her own lunch and texted me between classes just to check in. On orientation morning, she sent me a photo of her class schedule with honors biology circled in red pen. I still have that photo. It was just the 2 of us. Her mother had been out of the picture since Laya was 9, not passed away. Just gone. She made a choice and didn't choose us. So it was me, my remote job in logistics, and Laya. I worked from home most days. I was always reachable. The first 6 weeks of school seemed fine. She came home, we ate dinner, she did homework at the kitchen table. Then one Thursday in late September, she came home and went straight to her room. Said she was tired. I made her a plate and left it outside her door. She didn't push back, which wasn't like her, but I filed it under teenager stuff and let it go. I found out later that Thursday was the day they first cornered her in the hallway between second and third period. There was something else I didn't know, something that had been sitting in a school administrator's in tray for weeks. 3 years earlier, the district had upgraded the restroom locks throughout Ridgeline's main building. New reinforced steel doors with push-bar handles and a key override mechanism on the external side. The idea was solid. Students could lock from inside for privacy, but staff could override from outside in a genuine emergency. The master key lived in a locked cabinet in the custodial closet, logged in and out by name. Mr. Ferris, the head janitor, noticed in early October that the key appeared to have been duplicated, a physical copy made without authorization. He submitted a written notice to Principal Slade's office on October 3rd. When nothing came back, he submitted a second one on October 9th. 2 weeks before the incident, both notices were addressed directly to Slade. Neither received a response. Those doors were installed to protect students. Nobody in the administration seemed to think very hard about what happened when the wrong people had the key. The morning of October 22nd started like any other. Laya left at 7:40. I made coffee and opened my work laptop. At 8:55, she texted, "Dad, I don't feel good. Can I just come home?" I told her to go to the nurse, and I'd pick her up if the nurse cleared it. She sent a thumbs up. Then it was quiet for nearly an hour. At 9:47, my phone lit up all at once. Dad. Then, bathroom. Then, door won't open from outside. Then, boys. Then, please. At 9:50, I can't. 2 words. No period. And then nothing. I called her back immediately. 4 rings. Voicemail. I called the school's main number at 9:51. A woman answered, flat voice, clipped pace, the kind of tone that has answered the same phone for 11 years. I told her my daughter had just sent me 4 panic texts from inside a school bathroom and wasn't answering her phone. She said, "I'll pass along the message to her homeroom teacher." I said she'd sent 4 messages in 3 minutes and wasn't picking up. She said, "Sir, we have staff monitoring the hallways. I'm sure it's fine." I called back 90 seconds later. Same voice, same cadence, same script. Like calling an automated line that had learned to mimic concern without ever actually feeling it. A human robot. That's the only way I can describe Miss Odom in that moment, a human robot reading back safety assurances while a kid I raised was on a bathroom floor. She did not escalate. She did not flag the calls as urgent. She filled out 2 call logs and moved on. While she was telling me the hallways were monitored, the hallway camera outside the girls' restroom was recording exactly what she said couldn't happen. I grabbed my keys. I was out the door before she finished saying goodbye. In the car, I made 2 more calls to the school. Third call, Miss Odom again, same result. I asked to be transferred to the principal. 45 seconds of hold music, then voicemail. I left a message in a voice I didn't recognize as mine. My daughter texted me in a panic from inside a school bathroom. I believe she may be in danger. My name is Nolan. I need someone to physically go check on her right now. Please call me back. I called 911 from the highway. Told the dispatcher, my daughter was 14, that she'd sent 4 panic texts saying she was trapped, that boys were involved, and that the school wasn't moving. The dispatcher coded it as a welfare check at a school. not an emergency response. Estimated arrival, 15 to 20 minutes. I was 7 minutes away. By the time I pulled into the Ridgeline parking lot, I had made 5 calls to that school. 5 calls in 11 minutes with no escalation, no urgency, no one moving down a hallway to check. I was running before I cleared the front entrance. Miss Odom was at the front desk. I recognized her voice the moment I walked in. I told her who I was, that my daughter was somewhere in this building and had stopped responding, that I needed someone to go to the girls' restroom in the East Wing right now. She slid the sign-in sheet across the counter. I understand, sir, but this is standard procedure. We take safety very seriously. She said it while looking at her screen. She did not look at me once. I signed in. I handed her my ID. The clock on the wall behind her read 10:02. Laya's last text had been at 9:50. 12 minutes had passed with zero schoolside response, and now I was inside the building, 40 seconds from this desk, and my daughter was still somewhere in this building, and nobody had moved. And then Principal Slade came down the hallway. He was carrying a clear plastic container of salad. Plastic fork. The kind you get from the grocery store's prepared foods section. He looked at me the way a person looks at a minor inconvenience they have decided to manage. I told him everything. Fast, clear, no drama. My daughter, 4 panic texts. Boys. The bathroom. She wasn't answering. 9:50 was the last message. It was now 10:04. He raised his right hand. 5 fingers spread wide. Give me 5 minutes. He turned around and walked back down the hallway. I stood there. 5 minutes passed. I asked Miss Odom to call him again. She did. No answer came back. Another 2 minutes. I started moving toward the hallway. A security guard stepped into my path and told me I needed to wait in the lobby. It was 10:09. My phone buzzed once. A notification, the kind that shows up when a device goes unexpectedly offline. Laya had 63% battery when she texted me that morning. Phones at 63% don't just die. They get taken. Or something happens. I was still waiting at 10:09 when my daughter's phone went offline. I told the guard. He radioed someone. Nothing came back. I called 911 again, told the dispatcher that Leia's phone had just gone offline, that it had 63% battery, that boys had locked her in a bathroom, and that the principal had told me to wait and then disappeared. She said a unit was 4 minutes out. She told me to wait for police. I told her I was sorry, and I hung up. At that exact moment, Slade came back down the hallway. No salad. He stopped a few feet away and looked at me with the expression of a man who has decided a situation is manageable. I said, 3 boys went into a girl's bathroom and locked the door. My daughter's phone just went offline. She had 63% battery. I need you to unlock that door right now. He said, Mr. Voss, we don't actually know that's what's happening. Look, boys will be boys. Seniors pull pranks. This could be something completely harmless. I looked at him. She sent me 4 panic texts. Teenagers exaggerate. And making these kinds of accusations in a school hallway is going to embarrass a lot of people, including your daughter. He turned to go back down the hall. Like the conversation was over. Like that was a reasonable end to it. A student walking past the far end of the corridor had slowed down. She'd heard all of it. She would give a written statement later, and she would quote that phrase back word for word. I didn't say anything else to Slade. There was nothing left to say to him. I walked down the hallway. The guard called after me and reached for his radio. I kept walking. Past the lockers, past the trophy case, around the corner toward the girls' restroom wing. The guard grabbed my arm. I said, my daughter is in there. I pulled free. He grabbed again, and I stepped around him and kept moving. At the far end of the corridor, I could see it, a reinforced steel door with a push-bar handle. Closed. The same upgraded safety door the district had installed 3 years ago to protect students. The same door someone had made an unauthorized copy of the key to open from the outside. I hit the push bar. Nothing. I hit it again, harder. On the third impact, the door frame cracked inward. I pushed through. Laya was on the floor of the last stall. The emergency exit at the far end of the restroom was hanging open. The building's access log would later show the exit alarm had triggered at 10:11, a full minute before I reached the door. They were gone before I got there. They had what they came for, and they left. I reached her at 10:12. When she looked up at me, it was the look of a person who had been waiting and had stopped expecting anyone to come. I won't tell you what I found in that bathroom. That's not mine to tell. The medical examiner would document it. What I will tell you is that I carried her out into the hallway, and by the time police arrived at 10:14, a school aide was already pointing at me. The officers responded to the aide first. She was saying I had forced entry and shoved a guard. One officer moved toward me, while the other called for an ambulance. Principal Slade had reappeared. He was giving a statement, calmly, like a man who had prepared for exactly this version of events. In the noise of the hallway, I made one more decision. I walked to the principal's office. The door was open. Through the glass side panel, I could see his desk. And on his desk, the clear plastic salad container. I put my elbow through the window. I was zip-tied within seconds. I knew it was coming. I did it anyway. Some things just need to be broken. What I didn't know in that moment was that a security guard's body camera had captured the whole thing, the window, the desk, the salad container clearly visible in the frame. That footage would later become a formal exhibit. In the police report that afternoon, my charges were listed before the names of the 3 boys appeared anywhere in official documentation: criminal mischief, obstruction, misdemeanor assault on a school official. My court-appointed attorney was adequate. But I had a friend from college, a woman named Dana, who practiced family law, and I called her from outside the hospital that evening. She came and brought her work bag, and we sat in a hospital parking garage for 2 hours and started pulling records. The phone logs came first. 5 calls to Ridgeline High between 9:51 and 10:02. Miss Odom's call record showed 2 calls received and handled, logged as parent inquiry. No escalation protocol initiated. Not flagged. Just 2 entries in a call log. Then Slade's phone. His personal cell had received my voicemail at 9:56. The carrier's access log subpoenaed within the week showed the voicemail was opened and listened to at 10:03. He heard me say, "I believe my daughter is in danger," at 10:03. He walked out and gave me 5 fingers at 10:04. He went back to his office and stayed there for 11 minutes. Not calling for backup. Not dispatching a staff member. Not even walking to the hallway to look. 11 minutes while his phone held my voicemail and my daughter was on a bathroom floor at the end of that same corridor. The detectives working Laya's case subpoenaed the hallway security footage. The camera outside the girls' restroom showed 3 male students, 1:17, 2:18, entering at 9:12 a.m. They were not seen exiting through the main door at any point. The emergency exit alarm recorded their departure at 10:11, 59 minutes of documented occupancy. One of the boys had used a key on the external lock before they entered, a key that was not supposed to exist outside of a locked custodial cabinet. Mr. Ferris gave a sworn statement. He explained the cabinet, the login system, the duplication he'd noticed in early October. He produced both written notices he had submitted to Slade's office October 3rd and October 9th with his signature and the date received stamps from the front office. 2 formal, written safety warnings. 14 days before the incident. No response to either. Laya's SANE examination was completed that afternoon. The report documented findings consistent with sexual assault. 2 of the boys were 18, adults under the law. That night, as Laya and I were leaving the hospital, an SUV pulled up in the parking lot. One of the fathers rolled down his window. He said I should think carefully about making this bigger than it needed to be. He smiled when he said it, the kind of smile that also means something else. My dash cam had been running since I left the house that morning. It caught every second. His face. His plate. His exact words. By the next morning, both 18-year-olds had private attorneys. Dana laid out the stakes plainly. Criminal mischief could carry up to 2 years. The obstruction charge would likely be dropped, but the misdemeanor assault, the physical contact with the guard when I pulled free, could stick without the right framing. The school district had issued a public statement describing the incident as a trespassing event by an emotionally disturbed parent. The county paper ran it the next morning. Father charged after forcing entry into Ridgeline High. Local news picked it up before noon. If I was convicted even on the misdemeanor, a mandatory custody review would be triggered. I was Laya's sole custodial parent. There was no one else waiting in the wings. The families of the 2 18-year-olds had separate attorneys before their sons had been named in any official document. The school district had a legal team that had been doing this for decades. The DA had my name in a file. The boys who did this to Laya did not yet have files. Then the district's attorney reached out through a third party with an offer, my charges quietly reduced to a fine, a private letter of apology from the district, new security protocols implemented, and the 3 students' situation handled internally. In exchange, a non-disclosure agreement and no civil claims. Dana said it wasn't nothing. Financially, It might be the cleanest path. I told her I needed a few days. That same week, I took Laya to her first appointment with Dr. Celine Farrow, a trauma therapist Dana had recommended. At the end of the session, Dr. Farrow asked to speak with me briefly while Laya waited in reception. She said, "Your daughter is watching to see whether the world is going to make this right. If you settle quietly, she will interpret that as a second betrayal." She said it the way someone says something they wish were less true. I didn't sleep that night. I thought about the five-finger gesture. About 11 minutes. About 2 written notices from October 3rd and October 9th sitting in an tray, unread. About Laya eating dinner alone in her room on a Thursday in September while I filed it under teenager stuff. The district's settlement letter sat in a manila folder on Dana's desk. I called the journalist, a woman who had been covering school safety in the district for 3 years, and told her I wanted to talk. I told Dana what I was planning to send. I sent the journalist everything. Laya's texts, the phone logs, the voicemail access timestamp, Dana's documentation of the security footage, Mr. Ferris's 2 notices, the SANE report, redacted for Laya's privacy, the dashcam footage, and the settlement letter itself. I also filed a formal complaint with the State Department of Education and a civil rights complaint on Laya's behalf. I called the district's attorney and declined the offer. The journalist published her preliminary piece 48 hours later. The headline read, "Phone records show Ridgeline principal received father's voicemail then returned to lunch." It went statewide overnight. The third paragraph quoted, "Boys will be boys," sourced from the student who had been in the hallway and gave a statement. By the next morning, Principal Slade had retained a personal attorney. The school board convened an emergency meeting 2 weeks later. Slade arrived in a dark suit with a briefcase and 2 attorneys. He sat at the far end of the room and did not make eye contact with anyone in the audience. The auditorium held close to 200 people, parents from across the district, 2 journalists, and a pair of State Department of Education officials who had come as observers. Dana sat next to me in the front row. Between us was a spiral-bound document. 53 pages, date, stamped in the upper right corner. During the recess before public comment, I watched Slade stand in the hallway with a takeout container and a plastic fork. Someone photographed him. It circulated on 3 local Facebook groups within the hour. Some things follow you whether you plan for them to or not. When his name was called to address the board, he walked to the podium like a man who had decided somewhere between the parking lot and the microphone that he was still going to come out of this intact. He talked about protocol, about the complexities administrators face in real-time situations, about how even good leaders can encounter impossible decisions. He spoke for 6 minutes without once using my daughter's name. Then, Dana was given the floor. She connected a laptop to the projector and put 1 slide on the screen. No charts, no graphics. Just a column of timestamps in plain black text. 9:47 a.m. Laya's first panic text. 9:51. First call to the school. 9:56. Voicemail left for Principal Slade. 10:03. Voicemail accessed on Principal Slade's device. 10:04. Slade emerges, gives 5 fingers, returns to his office. 10:09. Laya's phone goes offline. 10:11. Emergency exit alarm triggers. 10:12. Nolan reaches Laya. The room read it in silence. Dana clicked to the next slide. 2 documents side by side, Mr. Ferris's written notice dated October 3rd and the second dated October 9th. Both addressed to Slade's office. Both stamped received by the front office. Both unanswered. The board chair, Patricia Osei, looked at Slade over the top of her reading glasses. "You accessed the voicemail at 10:03 and did not send anyone to that hallway?" Slade said it had been under review. She said, "For 11 minutes?" The room stayed quiet in a way that wasn't neutral. Slade's attorneys conferred with him briefly. Another board member asked about the key duplication reports. Slade said they had been received and were in process. Patricia Osei asked him to define that. He said an internal investigation had been initiated. She asked when that investigation had begun. Slade did not answer. "Which protocol?" Patricia Osei said, "covers ignoring 2 written safety reports for 14 days. His attorneys whispered. He still did not answer. Then I was given 3 minutes. I read from a page I had written and rewritten 7 times. I didn't rush it. I mentioned the 5-finger gesture. I mentioned what he had said in the hallway. I said, 'Boys will be boys.' That's what the principal of this school told me while my daughter's phone was offline and 3 seniors were in a bathroom they'd opened with an unauthorized key he had been warned about in writing. He had 2 notices in his office. He had my voicemail on his phone. He had 62 seconds to send one staff member down that hallway. Instead, he gave me 5 fingers and went back to his lunch. My daughter had 34 minutes. I paused. You installed reinforced steel doors to protect students. Those doors became a weapon used against my daughter because your principal ignored 2 written warnings about a duplicated key. I broke a window. You broke a child. I folded the page and sat down. Patricia Osei thanked me for my statement. For once, nobody gave me 5 fingers. For once, nobody told me to wait. 6 days after the board meeting, the DA dropped all charges against me. The formal notice cited the totality of documented circumstances. Dana framed a copy and mailed it to me without a note. The 2 18-year-olds were charged with sexual assault. Both cases proceeded to trial. The 17-year-old entered a juvenile adjudication process. All 3 of them had files now. Slade was placed on administrative leave within 48 hours of the board meeting. 8 weeks later, the district quietly transferred him to a non-student-facing administrative role at the central office. The board's press release called it a personnel reassignment and declined to characterize it as discipline. But he would never stand in front of students again, and every person who had been in that auditorium knew exactly why. The district settled my civil suit for an undisclosed amount. They implemented 3 new mandatory protocols: a key accountability log for all restricted access hardware, an emergency response hotline for parents reporting active student danger, and written administrative consequences for any failure to escalate a flagged safety concern. Mr. Ferris was formally commended in the board's corrective action report. Miss Odom retired in December. Laya's case was later named in a State Department of Education press release as a model for institutional corrective action. None of that is what mattered most. Laya transferred to a different school in January and started 9th grade over. For 7 months after the incident, she texted me every time she used a public restroom. 1 text when she went in, 1 when she came out. I always responded within 30 seconds. We called it the system. We never gave it a more serious name than that. On the afternoon the DA dropped my charges, she sent me 2 words: "We good?" I texted back, "We good." The district replaced the restroom doors that spring clear panel stalls, staff override codes, no master key. I drove past the school once after that. I didn't stop. She asked me once if I would do it again. I said yes. She said she knew.